Stop scrolling. Right now. Because what I am about to walk you through is not another finger-pointing rant, and it is not another recycled timeline. This is something darker. This is the room nobody is talking about. The room where, allegedly, every warning sign was screamed out loud, months before a 14-year-old girl's body was ever pulled out of the front trunk of a black Tesla in a Los Angeles tow yard. And the people inside that room, they didn't just watch it happen. Some of them, allegedly, helped scrub the evidence clean before the world could see it. Tonight, we are not chasing David. The world has already done that. Tonight, we are chasing the shadows behind him. The faceless administrators, the silent moderators, the so-called mods who allegedly turned a fan server into something that looks an awful lot like a hunting ground. And by the time this video ends, you will understand why I genuinely believe these people, these usernames, these avatars, these strangers behind keyboards, may have a lot more to answer for than anyone wants to admit. Take a breath. Sit down. Because the Discord is dark. And the deeper you dig, the worse it gets. Since the moment the David case detonated across the internet, the public has been pointing fingers in every possible direction. They pointed at his friends. They pointed at his family. They pointed at the people closest to him and shouted the same exhausted question over and over again. How could nobody have known? How could one young man fool an entire inner circle? How could a 14-year-old girl named Celeste Rivas Hernandez vanish, then reappear in the most horrific way imaginable, without a single person around him noticing a thing? But I want you to understand something tonight. Something the mainstream coverage keeps tiptoeing around. Something that, frankly, deserves a magnifying glass the size of a city block. There is one specific group of people in this entire saga who have somehow, miraculously, managed to slip beneath the spotlight. A group whose fingerprints are arguably all over the most digital, most documented, most preservable corner of David's entire empire. And nobody, not investigators in interviews, not the cable news segments, not the carefully edited true crime breakdowns, nobody is putting these people under the heat lamp the way they deserve. I am talking about the dark, shadowy operators who allegedly ran David's Discord server. And here's the part that should make your skin crawl. That server, which functioned as the beating heart of his entire fandom, has reportedly been wiped, scrubbed, sanitized, messages deleted in real time, channels disappearing while the world was still trying to figure out whose body was in that Tesla. And according to multiple sources who were inside that server, the cleanup was not random. It was not panicked teenagers covering up jokes in poor taste. It looked methodical. It looked deliberate. It looked like people who knew exactly what they were burying. Because here is the allegation. The Discord, fans say, was not just a music chat room. It was the central hub, the crossroads, the intersection where, according to the public narrative emerging online, David allegedly first encountered Celeste on Fortnite, then funneled her into the more private, more intimate, more controllable environment of Discord. And inside that environment, allegedly, the moderators, the volunteers who held the keys, who controlled the rules, who decided what stayed and what disappeared, created the conditions for what online sleuths are now calling something that looks disturbingly close to the trafficking pipeline of a minor. Let me be careful here. These are allegations. These are theories supported by leaked screenshots, by Reddit threads, by archived Discord exports. No moderator has been formally charged. But the questions are no longer fringe. The questions are mainstream. And the questions are getting louder by the day. If even a fraction of what is being alleged is true, then this entire operation was greased and lubricated by the platform itself and by the unpaid foot soldiers who kept the engine running. Every moderator who held that hammer of authority. Every administrator who approved the channels. Every adult who walked into a chat room full of children and decided to look the other way. They should be questioned. They should be scrutinized. They should be held to the fire of public accountability. And the question that haunts me, the question I cannot shake, is whether any of them ever will be. Let me walk you through a timeline. Because this is where the story stops being abstract and starts feeling like the opening pages of a horror novel. Anonymous researchers have begun assembling public timelines on platforms like Notion, piecing together the fragments of David's digital life with the cold precision of forensic accountants. And what they are uncovering raises hairs you didn't know you had. July 2nd, 2025. Roughly 4 weeks after Celeste, according to prosecutors, had already been dismembered. David is reportedly at a party. The location is documented. The address is documented. The attendees are documented. Photographs from that night exist. Posts from that night exist. He is described in those posts as living his best life, standing next to people, laughing for the camera, behaving like a man with absolutely nothing weighing on his soul. But while that party is in full swing, while music is playing, while drinks are being poured, while the world watches a rising star dance through summer, something else is happening in parallel. Something digital. Something that, when you read it now in hindsight, makes your stomach turn over. Inside David's Discord, on that same evening, a user types a question into the chat. Just 6 words. Is there a body in the trunk? 6 words. Sitting there, glowing on a screen. A reply comes back. 1 word. Yes. Then a follow-up. A user asking, half-jokingly, whether David himself is in the trunk for failing to drop his upcoming album. Now, on its own, you could brush this off as gallows humor. You could call it dark fandom comedy, the kind of edgy nonsense that floats around chronically online communities every minute of every day. But context, my friends, is everything. Because this comment exists weeks before the world ever heard the words Tesla, Hollywood, or Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Before any news broadcast. Before any police press conference. Before any indictment. It is, allegedly, a digital fingerprint left at the scene of the crime months before the crime even hit the headlines. And it is sitting inside the very server that, according to current reporting, was being managed by adults who had a duty to monitor what was being said. So you have to ask the question, even if you don't like the answer. What did the Discord moderators see that night? Did they read it? Did they laugh at it? Did they delete it? Or did they simply scroll past, unaware that one of their own members had just typed out what may go down as one of the most disturbing pieces of foreshadowing in modern internet history? Now fast forward, September 8th, 2025, the day everything stopped being a rumor. That afternoon, in a tow yard in Los Angeles, a black Tesla is examined. Inside the front trunk, what the brand calls the frunk, investigators discover human remains. Decomposing. The vehicle is registered in Texas. The name on the registration belongs to a young man already known to millions of teenagers across the world as the rising voice of a moody, viral subgenre. David Anthony Burke. Stage name, simply David. But here is the haunting part. The part that should freeze you in place. That night, before the local news desks even had time to type up the story, before the chirons could roll, before anyone outside the LAPD knew what was going on inside that Tesla, David's own Discord chat was already buzzing with the answer. Members were already typing it. They said David killed someone. D4VD killed someone. The community wasn't speculating in the abstract. They weren't asking what happened. They were already arriving at conclusions. Within hours of the discovery, a portion of his most devoted fanbase pivoted, almost instinctively, to suspecting their own idol. Read that again. His own people. Suspected him. Immediately. One member typed, "Did my goat somehow get brainwashed?" Another wrote, "I knew the whole time he was shady. Just had a feeling like something like this would come out eventually." Another, more chillingly, recalled a lyric from his catalog. A song where, allegedly, he had been subtly hinting about the death of a former girlfriend. Now keep in mind, on that exact day, the world did not yet know who the victim was. The body had not been identified. The connection to a 14-year-old runaway from a working-class neighborhood 75 miles southeast of Los Angeles had not yet been made public. The age of the victim had not been disclosed. The relationship to David had not been confirmed. And yet somehow, his own Discord members were already, allegedly, arriving at the conclusion that he had killed his girlfriend. How does that happen? How does a fanbase race ahead of a homicide investigation? How does a chatroom unanimously zero in on the truth before the medical examiner has finished writing the toe tag? The only honest answer is that some of those people had been sitting on something for a long time, and the body in the Tesla simply confirmed the thing they already, on some level, suspected. There is one name in this story that the online community will not stop circling. One handle, one username, one alleged moderator who, according to every digital sleuth currently combing through the wreckage, may have stood the closest to the fire. We will call her Sophia. Sophia, by her own admission, was deeply embedded in David's Discord. She was 24 years old, living in Canada, and she had reportedly spent more than 2 years cultivating the server, posting hundreds of messages a week, climbing the ranks of unpaid volunteer moderation, and curating what she described as a community she was proud of. She was so close to the inner orbit, allegedly, that she and David had each other's personal cell phone numbers. She was so close that, on at least one occasion, David allegedly FaceTimed her directly to ask for help deleting a Twitch livestream. A livestream that, according to multiple sources, contained interactions between him and a girl who would later be widely identified as Celeste. And on the night of September 8th, when the news broke, Sophia was reportedly one of the first people inside the server to respond. According to published reporting, she typed out frantic, fragmented messages. She wrote, in her own words, that she had been telling David repeatedly that he needed to be careful. Now stop and ask yourself something. Read that sentence one more time. Slowly. I have been telling him he needs to be careful. That is not the language you use about a victim. That is not the worry you express about somebody who might get hurt. That is the language you use about somebody who is doing something that could get them caught. That phrasing, That exact construction implies awareness. It implies that the person speaking knew, on some level, that the person being warned was already engaged in conduct that carried risk. That is the kind of sentence that, in any courtroom, would make a prosecutor lean forward in their chair. To be clear, Sophia has publicly defended herself. She has insisted that she did not know the victim's age. She has said she believed David's relationships were with adults. She has explained that the deleted Twitch stream was removed for content reasons, not as part of a cover-up. She has claimed that the inside jokes of the Discord were impossible to translate to outsiders. And she has emphasized repeatedly that English is not her first language and that she was simply trying to fit in with a crowd. But online investigators are not buying every line of that defense. And it is not hard to see why. Because the digital footprint, the screenshots, the receipts that have been preserved by users who downloaded the server before the cleanup, they tell a story that does not match a passive, innocent bystander. They tell the story of someone who allegedly was at the center of decisions that erased data, who was allegedly in the position of trust where she could have asked questions, raised concerns, contacted authorities, or simply refused to delete anything until the dust settled. And allegedly she did not. Whether Sophia is a victim of circumstance, a young woman who got swept up in a community and made decisions she now regrets, or whether she is something more, that is a question for investigators, not for me. But if there is one thing I can say with certainty, it is this. She has questions to answer. A lot of them. To understand how all of this happened, how a Discord server became something allegedly so dark, you have to understand how David himself was built. He was not born famous. He was, by all accounts, a homeschooled kid from a religious family that had moved from Queens, New York, down to a quiet suburb of Houston, Texas. He was raised on the internet. He cut his teeth uploading Fortnite gameplay videos. He chased the algorithm. He grinded, as gamers say, for years before anyone paid attention. He was, in the words of one early fan interviewed by the press, trying his hardest to get somewhere. And then, in 2021, his mother gave him a piece of advice that would change everything. She told him to stop using copyrighted music in his Fortnite uploads and to start making his own. So this teenager, with nothing but an iPhone, a pair of cheap earbuds, and a free mobile recording app, climbed into his sister's closet, freestyled over a royalty-free piano beat he found online, and uploaded the result to SoundCloud. That track was called Runaway. Within months, he had released the brooding, viral hit Romantic Homicide, a song with lyrics about killing someone in the back of his mind. Within 2 months of that, he was signed to a major label. Within a year, he was being heralded by the press as the next prodigy of his generation. He was compared to other teen breakout stars. He was profiled in glossy magazines as a wonder kid, a mouthpiece for Gen Z heartache, a multi-genre visionary. And here is the crucial part. He communicated with his explosively young, explosively impressionable fanbase through one specific channel. His Discord. The server, by some accounts, was originally created by a fan around the time he signed his record deal. It was not officially affiliated with his label. But, according to reporting, at least one member of his management team was inside it. The server functioned as a free promotional engine, a direct line from the artist to his most devoted listeners, a place to drop pre-sale codes, hype tour dates, share new merchandise, and cultivate the cinematic mythology of his alter ego, a blindfolded character whose name reportedly translates to pain in Japanese. David explicitly trained his fans to look for hidden meanings. He encouraged them to leave conspiracy theories. He told them to hunt for Easter eggs in his videos. He fed an entire generation of online teenagers the idea that his music was a puzzle, and that they were the chosen ones smart enough to solve it. That is the soil. That is the environment. That is the digital terrarium in which the alleged grooming of a child, according to the current public narrative, may have taken root. And the moderators of that server, the unpaid foot soldiers who kept it humming, were the gatekeepers of that terrarium. There is another name in this story you should know. We will call him Ghost. Ghost is, by his own description, an ethical hacker. 16 years old, operating out of his bedroom in a quiet town in New Jersey. He had joined David's Discord back in 2022, in the early days, when the community was small and the music was just beginning to climb the charts. He was, by his own admission, a fan. He liked the songs. He liked the lore. He liked the idea of catching new releases before anyone else. But on the day the body was found, Ghost flipped. Like a switch. He told reporters that the moment he heard about the Tesla, the moment he understood what had allegedly happened, he felt himself slipping into what he called detective mode. And Ghost knew something most members of the public did not. He knew how to extract data from a Discord server before it could be wiped clean. So he raced to the keyboard. He typed Celeste's name into the search bar of David's Discord, half expecting nothing to come back. Instead, what loaded onto his screen made him freeze. A message. From August of 2024. More than a year before her body was ever found, David allegedly had posted in the general chat that he was in a song crisis. A vague, casual prompt. The kind of thing a content creator throws out to spark engagement. And inside the dozens of responses, one stood out. One that, allegedly, came from a user whose account would later be deleted. The message read, "Drop the one with the missing girl. Celeste Rivas Hernandez. By name. The full name of the future victim. Posted publicly. Inside the server. More than a year before her death made national news." Read that sentence 3 times if you need to. A user, allegedly inside David's official fan community, wrote out the name of a missing child. A child who would more than a year later be found dismembered inside the trunk of David's Tesla, and connected her by name to one of his unreleased songs. How does that happen? How does that exist? Who is that user? What did they know? Why did they know it? And why, according to Ghost's own reporting of what he saw, did messages around that comment appear to be quietly disappearing, in real time, while the rest of the world was still trying to figure out who was even in the Tesla? Ghost realized, in that moment, that he had a window. A small, closing window. So he did the only thing he could think of. He used his security token. He started extracting the entire server. By his account, the download took roughly 9 hours and pulled down nearly 4 gigabytes of data. He paced his bedroom that entire time. He uploaded the result to the Internet Archive. He shared it publicly. And the subreddit dedicated to the case, in his own words, went wild. That archive, according to multiple sources, is now one of the most important pieces of preserved digital evidence in the entire David case. Not because of what David himself wrote in it, but because of what other people inside it allegedly wrote, said, asked, joked about, and tried to delete. And those other people, the moderators, the administrators, the inner circle who kept that machine running, are, in my view, the part of this story we have only begun to scratch. There is yet another name worth knowing. We will call her May. May is a 22-year-old law student in the Netherlands. A self-described rational person. A research-obsessed paralegal who, in her own words, cares deeply about the truth. She was never, originally, a fan of David's. She had heard the music. She had seen the videos. She had not been moved. But when the body was found, something about the case grabbed her by the collar and refused to let go. The brutality of the alleged crime. The youth of the victim. The eerie symbolism in David's catalog. The dismemberment. The deletion of digital evidence. The sense, growing every day, that the official institutions were moving far too slowly. May began posting on Reddit. Her posts blew up. By her own accounting, one of them collected over 500,000 views. Her direct messages started filling with information from strangers. People sent her screenshots. People sent her timelines. People sent her usernames. And one screenshot in particular, late one night, stopped her cold. It was a message, allegedly posted by Sophia, in which she casually mentioned, in front of the entire server, that David had once called her, personally, asking for help deleting a Twitch livestream. A livestream that allegedly contained footage of his then-girlfriend. Now connect the dots, slowly, the way May allegedly did that night. If David was calling a moderator, in a panic, asking her to delete a livestream featuring his girlfriend, and if that girlfriend was, in fact, a 14-year-old child, then the act of deletion itself, allegedly, was the act of destroying evidence of an adult man interacting on camera with a minor. The act of deletion was, allegedly, the act of cleaning up. And the person allegedly making that deletion was not the artist himself. It was, allegedly, a moderator. An unpaid volunteer. A young woman in Canada, doing what she had been asked, possibly without understanding what she was doing. Possibly. Or possibly understanding all of it. That is the question. May, like Ghost, refused to let it go. She joined private Discord groups dedicated to the case. She connected with other amateur investigators. She compared notes with private investigators who were beginning to circle the case from the outside. She built spreadsheets. She built timelines. She built a one-woman archive of every breadcrumb she could find. And every time the case stalled, every time the lap declined to comment, every time the silence stretched a little longer, May sharpened her pencil a little more. That is the story of this case, in many ways. While the official institutions said nothing, while press conferences were postponed, while autopsy reports were placed under security holds, the public, armchair detectives, law students, ethical hackers, frustrated former fans, built the case in their bedrooms. When the major magazine investigation finally broke, the headline alone was enough to set the internet on fire. Roughly translated, it read, "They made him a star. Now they want him convicted of murder." The piece detailed how a legion of young fans, through a single Discord server, had propelled an unknown teenage SoundCloud artist into a globally recognized name. And it detailed how those same fans, after the body was found, turned on him with a ferocity that few celebrities in history have ever experienced. The article zoomed in on Sophia. It walked, hour by hour, through her experience on the night of the discovery. The buzzing phone, the pulse of adrenaline, the frantic typing of what is happening, and bro, just what? It described, almost cinematically, her walking from her bed to her computer in her parents' apartment, her hands shaking as she opened the chat. It described the cascade of disbelief inside the server. Members joking that the news was fake. Members theorizing that David had been framed. Members suggesting it was all a marketing stunt for an upcoming album. Members making jokes so dark, so out of taste, so hideously inappropriate that I will not repeat them on this channel. It described how, eventually, as the dawn rose on September 9th, the moderators were forced to disable the chat entirely. The community had become unmanageable. The speculation had become so rampant, the suspicions so loud, the gallows humor so toxic, that the only option left was to lock the doors. But by then, of course, the damage was done. Members had already begun screen recording. Members had already begun archiving. Members like Ghost had already begun extracting the data. The cat was out of the bag, and no amount of moderator deletion was going to put it back in. The article also detailed the parallel grief of strangers who had never met Celeste, but who, by the end of the investigation, felt as though they had known her their entire lives. It described a 30-year-old woman in Oregon who had survived her own grooming as a teenager, and who, upon hearing about Celeste, said simply, "I have been her. I have been in her shoes." That sentence, more than any other in this entire saga, is the one that stays with me at night. The deeper online investigators dug, the more names began to surface. Some of them are private. Some of them are public. Some of them are simply usernames behind avatars. But each one, allegedly, played a role in the larger ecosystem. There were the gaming streamers who had appeared in David's social media posts, who suddenly found themselves cornered by online interrogators demanding to know what they had seen. There were the models and actors who had appeared in his music videos, women who had been photographed alongside him repeatedly, who, after the case broke, said they were being stalked, threatened, harassed, and in some cases, allegedly, even threatened with bodily harm. There were the moderators with usernames I will not give the satisfaction of repeating, who, according to multiple Reddit threads, were known by Inner Circle members to have been aware of David's relationship with a young girl long before her name became national news. There were the administrators who allegedly held the technical keys to deletion, the ones who could erase entire channels with a click. There were the so-called managers of the server who, according to certain online accusations, are now being asked, by name, to be summoned by a grand jury. I want to say this very carefully and very clearly, because the line between public scrutiny and online harassment is razor thin. Not every person whose name has been dragged through this case is guilty of anything. Not every moderator was an accomplice. Not every fan in that server was a co-conspirator. The vast majority of people who joined that Discord did so because they liked a song. They were children themselves, in many cases. Teenagers who happened to enjoy a viral track on a video sharing app and clicked a link that led them somewhere most of them never fully understood. But there is a difference between the average member and the people who held the levers. There is a difference between scrolling past a creepy joke and actively deleting a live stream. There is a difference between hearing rumors and personally being the person on a phone call with the artist as he allegedly tries to scrub a video featuring a minor. That difference is not legal nuance. That difference is moral gravity. And moral gravity, eventually, becomes legal exposure. Now I want to take you somewhere most coverage of this case skips entirely. I want to take you into the bot logs. Inside David's Discord server, there were automated channels that would post when certain online activities occurred. Public posts on social media, new uploads, Twitch streams going live, and, in some cases, package deliveries. In May of 2025, according to leaked logs that have been circulated extensively online, the server's bots posted a series of strange, almost cryptic messages. Some referenced a name, some referenced a word, and the combination of the two, when read together, sends a chill down your spine. The name was Victoria Mendez. The word was death. According to ongoing reporting, prosecutors now allege that David used the false identity Victoria Mendez to order items to his home. Items including, allegedly, 2 chainsaws, a body bag, heavy-duty laundry bags, a blue inflatable pool, and a shovel. Items that, in any other context, are absolutely mundane. Items that, in this context, are the contents of a nightmare. And the name itself is haunting. Victoria, in Latin, means victory, the personification of triumph. Mendez, derived from older European linguistic roots, allegedly carries connotations involving the universal and the sacrificial. Online theorists have argued, perhaps too poetically, that the false name itself is a kind of cipher, a coded boast, a breadcrumb left, allegedly, by a young man who had been trained, by his own marketing strategy, to leave breadcrumbs everywhere. I want to be honest with you. I think most people in this case are not deep enough to engineer that kind of symbolism. I do not think David is a literary mastermind, but I do think he loved to perform depth. I do think he loved to dangle hints. I do think he loved to be seen as the cinematic puppeteer of his own life. And if there is even a 1% chance that the name was chosen on purpose, even subconsciously, then it is yet one more piece of evidence that the entire architecture of this man's life was, allegedly, built on the aesthetics of harm. And those aesthetics, of course, were curated, distributed, and amplified by the moderators of his Discord. Eventually, after 7 long months of silence from the Los Angeles Police Department, the dam finally cracked. David was arrested at a mansion in the Hollywood Hills. The press conference followed shortly after. And the words spoken at that podium were the words that the online sleuths had been waiting, in some cases praying, to hear. The district attorney announced that David was being charged with first-degree murder, with special circumstances. The kind of charge that carries, as a maximum penalty, life in prison without the possibility of parole, or, in certain jurisdictions and circumstances, the death penalty itself. There were additional charges related to the alleged sexual abuse of a minor and the alleged mutilation of human remains. According to the official narrative presented by prosecutors, David was already, at the time of Celeste's death, under investigation for alleged lewd and lascivious acts. Celeste, allegedly, was a witness in that investigation, and she was, allegedly, killed in order to silence her, to protect a music career that, according to the prosecutor's own words, was extremely lucrative and was, in their view, threatened by what she might have been about to say. David has pleaded not guilty. His attorney has said that the actual evidence will show he did not murder Celeste, and that they will rigorously defend his innocence. That defense will play out in a courtroom, on a timeline none of us controls, with a jury none of us can predict. The justice system, with all of its imperfections, will run its course. But while that case grinds forward, the question of the Discord, the moderators, the deleted messages, and the alleged grooming pipeline still hangs in the air. Unresolved, unanswered, unaddressed. There is one final question I want you to sit with before this video ends. And it is, perhaps, the most uncomfortable question of all. What did the platform know? Discord, the company, has issued statements. They have emphasized that they require all users to be at least 13 years old. They have stated, publicly, that no part of their work is more important than safety for teenagers. They have noted, correctly, that the badges users display on their profiles, including the ones that supposedly verify a user is over the age of 18, are not officially verified by the company. Those age badges, they have said, are determined by the moderators of individual servers, not by the platform. Read that last part carefully. The badges that mark a user as an adult inside a server like David's were allegedly granted by the same moderators we have been discussing this entire video, which means that, allegedly, an unpaid volunteer in Canada or anywhere else in the world had the technical capability to flag a 13-year-old as an adult with a single click, and the platform itself would not flag it, would not verify it, and would not catch it. That is not a technical bug. That is, allegedly, an architectural choice. And that choice, in cases like this one, has consequences that ripple outward into the real world, into the trunk of a Tesla, into the medical examiner's office, into the courtrooms where families now sit, every day, waiting for justice for their 14-year-old daughter. If you are listening to this and you have children, nieces, nephews, younger siblings, or students, please understand what platforms like this actually are. They are not chat rooms. They are, in too many cases, unsupervised cities. And inside those cities, the only people walking the streets at night are sometimes the people you would, in any other context, run from. Despite all of this, despite the institutional silence, despite the platform deflections, despite the deleted messages, despite the legal proceedings that may stretch on for years, the digital investigators are still digging. May, the law student in the Netherlands, is still scouring the archived Discord. She is still building timelines. She is still cross-referencing dates against album promotion schedules, against social media posts, against tour dates, against everything. She has noted, publicly, the disturbing fact that the alleged date of Celeste's death coincided exactly with the period in which David was most aggressively promoting the vinyl edition of his debut album. While, allegedly, a child was being killed in his home, he was, on his own social media, dancing into the camera and telling his fans that their prayers had been answered. Sarah, the woman in Oregon who once survived her own grooming, is still posting, still gathering, still trying to make sense of how she ended up empathizing with yet another young victim of a predator she allegedly recognized in her own past. Ghost, the 16-year-old in New Jersey, is still defending the archive, still standing watch over the data he extracted, still answering questions from journalists, from podcasters, from anyone who needs the proof he preserved before the cleanup got to it first. And Sophia, the moderator at the center of so many of the questions, is, by her own telling, trying to log off. Trying to walk outside. Trying to touch grass, as the kids say. Trying to remember what life was like before she spent every hour of every day inside a server that allegedly became something none of its members ever wanted to imagine. I am not here to tell you what to feel about Sophia. I am not here to tell you whether she is a villain, a victim, or simply a young woman who did not understand the gravity of what she was participating in. That, again, is for investigators. That is for the legal process. That is for whatever grand jury, if any, is eventually convened. But I am here to tell you that she has questions to answer. And so do the other moderators. And so does the platform that hosted them. And so does the label that profited from a fanbase that was allegedly partially built on the back of a minor whose name became known to the world only after she was already gone. Here is what I keep coming back to after all of this. A teenager in Texas wanted to be famous. He was given a microphone. He was given an algorithm. He was given a record deal. He was given a Discord server. He was given, allegedly, an unsupervised digital kingdom in which he could behave as he wished, with thousands of fans treating his every cryptic post like scripture. And inside that kingdom, allegedly, a 14-year-old girl from a working-class town 75 miles southeast of Hollywood became one more name on a list. One more user behind one more avatar. One more child who allegedly walked through a door that no adult had ever bothered to lock. She liked a song. That is how it started. She liked a moody, viral, slow-building ballad about heartache, the kind of song that millions of children her age were liking at exactly the same moment in time. The difference, in her case, was that the algorithm did not just deliver her a song. It allegedly delivered her a person. And that person, allegedly, became her ending. That is the part of this case that should haunt every parent watching this video. Every teacher. Every uncle. Every older sibling. Every adult who has ever assumed that a chat room is just a chat room. It is not just a chat room. It is sometimes a corridor. And on the other end of the corridor, sometimes there is somebody waiting. And the people who are supposed to be guarding the corridor, the moderators, the administrators, the platforms, are sometimes the people who hold the door open. The David case is not over. It is, in many ways, only beginning. The trial will unfold. Evidence will be tested. Witnesses will be called. The autopsy report will be read aloud. The defense will mount its arguments. The prosecution will present theirs. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a family in a small town will sit every day, waiting for justice for their 14-year-old daughter, who once loved to sing and dance, whose mother described as a beautiful, strong girl who looked forward to Friday movie nights, who told her parents she loved them, who deserved 1,000 more sunrises than she ever got to see. But the broader question, the question that this video has tried to drag into the daylight, is the question of the people in the shadows. The Discord moderators, the administrators, the volunteers, the unpaid lieutenants who allegedly kept the engine of this entire operation running for years. The ones whose fingerprints, allegedly, are on the deletions, on the bans, on the cleanup, on the silence. Will they ever face a courtroom? I do not know. Will they ever sit for an interview under oath? I do not know. Will the platform itself ever be held to a standard of responsibility that matches the scale of what occurred inside one of its servers? I do not know. But I do know this. The internet remembers. The archives survive. The screenshots persist. The timelines have been written, and they will be written again, by people like Ghost, by people like May, by people like Sarah, by people like every armchair detective who refused to let a 14-year-old girl become a footnote. If even one of those moderators is sitting at home tonight, watching a video like this one, I want them to understand something very clearly. The world is not finished asking. The world is not finished looking. The world is not finished wondering what you knew, when you knew it, and what you did or did not do about it. There is a phrase that has stuck with me throughout this entire investigation, written by one of the online observers in the days after the body was found. Everyone in this server is equally as guilty. We knew. I cannot verify that statement. I cannot tell you who wrote it, or whether they meant it literally, or whether it was simply the kind of catastrophizing rhetoric that fills any community in the immediate aftermath of a tragedy. But I can tell you that those words, fairly or unfairly, are now part of the historical record. They are now part of the digital fossil layer. They are now embedded in the archive that Ghost extracted from his bedroom in New Jersey on a long, sleepless night in September. And those words, like everything else inside that server, will not be deleted. Not anymore. The Discord is dark. It will stay dark. It will be picked over by investigators, by journalists, by lawyers, by historians of the internet, for years to come. Every name will be cross-referenced. Every message will be reread. Every deletion will be reconstructed. The cleanup did not work. The cleanup never works. Once a thing is uploaded, it is never truly gone. David, if the allegations against him are true, will spend the rest of his life regretting the day he ever spun up that server. He should. The moderators who allegedly helped him keep it running should regret it too. The platform that allegedly allowed it to flourish should regret it most of all. And the rest of us, the parents, the teachers, the older siblings, the adults who pay attention, should regret every single moment we ever assumed the kids on the other side of the screen were safe. Because they are not. They were not. And Celeste Rivas Hernandez, 14 years old, with the gold cross around her neck and the ring with David's name etched onto her finger, is the unbearable proof. That is where I will leave you tonight. Not with a tidy bow. Not with a satisfying answer. Not with a guarantee that the system will deliver justice in any of the ways it should, but with a promise. The same promise the online sleuths have been making quietly, in the corners of subreddits and Discord servers and group chats for months. We are not letting this go. We are not turning the page. We are not moving on. We will keep this story in the public eye until the courtrooms have done their work, until the moderators have answered their questions, until the platforms have answered theirs, and until the family of a 14-year-old girl can finally sleep through the night again. And do not, under any circumstances, look away.